Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Andy Linehan. Good afternoon. Can you hear? We need testing. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? No. Testing. There we go. Good afternoon. I'm Andy Linehan. Can I have your attention for a minute? Good afternoon. I'm Andy Linehan, president of the City Club of Portland. Welcome to the City Club's Friday Forum, A Taste of Food Policy, which is co-sponsored by Slow Food Portland. As I'm sure you're quite aware by now, we've asked you to hold off opening your lunch boxes. Well, the time has finally come. Please go ahead and open your lunch boxes. And while you're doing that, look at the information on your tables, which tells about the source of the food and the implications for what's in your boxes. In just a few minutes, Ron Paul, our moderator, will tell you a little bit about the surprise that's inside for some of you. Well, I see some of you are raising some flags indicating you're hungry. So if there's nothing in your box, raise the flag, and we won't let you go hungry today, and you'll have a chance to eat with us. So while you enjoy your lunch, and before we begin our program, I have a few items of City Club business. Can people hear me? Right. Okay. Next Friday, May 14th, City Club shines its spotlight on three of the newest art leaders in town: Carlos Kalmar of the Oregon Symphony, Christopher Mattagliano of the Portland Opera, and Christopher Stowell of the Oregon Ballet Theater. In this new direction for the arts, how will Portland perform? Alice McCarter of the Meyer Memorial Trust will moderate a behind-the-scenes look at this double bill of the performing arts and public policy. Read more about the forum in the City Club Bulletin, and you can register online at www.pdxcityclub.org. Because today's program is co-sponsored with Slow Food Portland, many of you may not yet be City Club members. Well, after you taste what City Club serves up today, we think you'll want to come back for more. The club offers a smorgasbord of ways to get involved, and it all begins with membership. And there's no better time than now, because if you join the City Club today, we'll put your name into a drawing for 2 free tickets to see, appropriately enough, Fully Committed, the play at the Portland Center Stage about the restaurant business in New York. Membership brochures and forms are on each table, and they're available from staff members. So join City Club today, and you could be a winner in more ways than one. Broadcast of City Club programs this quarter is made possible in part by corporate underwriting from Pacificair, Portland General Electric, and Zimmer Gunsel Frasca. We're very grateful for their support. On to our program. James Beard once said that food is our common ground, a universal experience. For many Americans, however, our experience of food extends no further than the distance from our supermarket to our dining table, or from the moment we review the restaurant menu to the moment we calculate the tip. Hidden from view is the vast network of relationships and policies that brings the foods that we eat to our table, at least for some of us. For many other Americans, however, the food experience is a non-experience, a struggle with hunger and malnutrition. Our panel today will provide a taste of some of the issues and policies that govern who eats and what we eat. And who better to introduce our panel than Ron Paul? After 15 years as a noted chef and restaurateur, Ron Paul entered the public sector when he joined former City Commissioner Charlie Hales as his chief of staff in 1999. He thought he was leaving the world of retail behind, only to find out that he was now in retail politics. Since 2002 and Charlie's departure from public life, Ron Paul has continued with the city's planning bureau, leading the effort to create the region's first full-time year-round public market since 1941. Yes. And Ron Paul is also involved in arts and culture planning issues, and he serves as a member of the Oregon Arts Commission. So let's welcome Ron.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And for those of you who raised their yellow cards, my guess is you had a response of shock, of surprise, of, hey, I paid my dues just like everyone else. Why am I singled out? Well, for the 15% of those who are food insecure in Oregon, it's not a surprise. It's not something that has come just in the opening of a box. It's a fact of life. And today we're going to talk about food. Obviously, we all share in enjoying the bounty that is Oregon, the foods, the wines, the farmers markets, the coming public market, and the role that agriculture plays not only in our lives but in our economy. But we also need to face the fact that with the second highest hunger rate of any state in the country, that there are issues that we as a state, we as citizens, and we who are sitting here enjoying a wonderful lunch, care of New Seasons markets, need to pay attention to. So we've assembled, as every moderator would want to say, just a stellar panel. And I can safely say that. We have 3 individuals who are representing different parts on the spectrum of food. I'm going to introduce them all in the order that they will speak, and then you'll have a chance to listen to each of their perspectives, not only on the questions of eating right, but on the subtext to today's session on our right to eat. We'll start with Debra Lippoldt, then Brian Rotor, and last Katy Coba. Debra is executive director of Growing Gardens, a local nonprofit that really focuses on getting food to those who most need it. She resolutely believes that you are what you eat, and as a registered dietitian, a former university faculty member, and one of our community's strident activists for food access and security, Debra has the opportunity of living every day the mission that she is dedicated to fulfilling, and that's getting food to more of those people who symbolically would have raised their yellow cards were they here. Brian Rotor is something close to a Renaissance man. Currently as president and managing partner of New Seasons Markets, but in prior lives as a meat cutter, as I think even as a CEO of a major market, he knows that he's bagging more groceries now probably than he ever did when he was just on the front lines. Brian also is co-chair of the Multnomah County City of Portland Food Policy Council, and their report that was issued in the fall addresses some of the issues that we're needing to pay careful attention to in our discussion today. Then we'll hear from Katy Coba. Katy is a Renaissance woman. She went from the wheat fields, the amber wheat fields of Pendleton, where she grew up, to Whitman College in Walla Walla, so she traded wheat for onions and couldn't get away from the products that she loved so well. She currently, after many years in state government, in marketing positions, policy positions for Governor Kitzhaber, has now joined the Kulongoski administration as the director of the Oregon Department of Agriculture. We will start with Debra and ask that you hold your questions until after the 3 of them have had a chance to talk. And Chris Smith will provide the first question. And since this is a new venue, we will be having the questions from this microphone to my right. Debra.
Great. It's a great pleasure to be here, and it's wonderful to see all of you out there. You can eat right, but do you have the right to eat? You can eat right, but do you have the right to eat? Children, parents, individuals, people who aren't able to work, seniors, going without anything to eat because they can't afford to buy food is unacceptable. Is there anybody that would disagree with that statement? On the surface, it really seems so simple, yet even as you open your lunch boxes, as we examine the food before us, we know that the issues of hunger and food insecurity in our city, in our state, in our country, in our world are not so simple. But let's bring it closer to home. For those of you who sat down to an empty lunchbox today, how did it make you feel? The instant that you saw it, was it the first time you've had this experience? Or is this something you're familiar with? Was there any anger? Was there any disappointment? Was there any hunger? How did it make you feel to sit next to someone who had a full box? Did they offer to share it with you? How did that make you feel? Closer? Sorry. Maybe you were grateful, maybe you were embarrassed, or maybe you were envious, or maybe you felt beholden. Of course, the analogy only goes so far. Most of us in this room have every opportunity to get up and leave and go buy our own lunch and come back. We're not dependent on what is given to us. Do we have the right to eat? You may be interested to know that the United States is one of the few countries in the world that has not adopted a basic right to eat policy. In 1977, President Jimmy Carter, I never called him James before, Jimmy Carter, did sign such an international treaty or policy, but we have yet to ratify that in this country, unlike over 145 other countries. I know that last year the City Club had the good fortune to hear from Rachel Bristol from the Oregon Food Bank statewide network of emergency food programs, as well as Patty Whitney Wise, on the seemingly intractable problem of hunger and food insecurity in Oregon. Just to refresh your memory, as Ron has said, Oregon has one of the highest rates of hunger and food insecurity in the country, and we've had that distinction, unfortunately, for quite a while. We have an emergency food system in Oregon that is, without question, one of the most efficient, unparalleled in the country, efficient in its scope, its collaboration across county and state lines, and for its advocacy to find lasting solutions to this complicated problem. Yet the emergency food system is playing catch-up with our hunger problem. If you pay close attention to the definition of food insecurity, it means that you don't have the financial resources to afford to buy food. Why are so many Oregonians having to turn to emergency services? There's high cost of housing, stagnant wages. We see that when we do have economic growth before this recent recession, we were finding most of that growth going to the top fifth of our population, and in fact the bottom fifth lost about 5% on the average family income. We have people moving often from place to place within the state. That disrupts probably they're looking for jobs or looking for more affordable housing. That's disrupting their ability to build networks and security systems. High cost of living, housing, wages, these are local and state issues as well as national. And yet all the food donations in the world will not make people more food secure. It's by definition, it's a short-term, very important, but short-term solution. Yet more and more people rely on the emergency food system for day-to-day, week-to-week food access. It is no longer an emergency system. I want to make it very clear, I am not saying we should stop donating food, or that the emergency food system, food bank, pantries, soup kitchens should stop what they're doing. By all means, I hope you all fill your bags full tomorrow for the Stamp Out Hunger food drive. But what I am saying is it doesn't stop there. It's the responsibility of all of us to understand as best we can the complexities of the issue and inform ourselves, our actions, our elected officials, and to find solutions. And I do mean solutions, it's not a single issue and a single solution. We currently have created a two-tier food system. In addition to our agriculture sector, we now have farms growing food for food banks. We have food brokers, we have the America's Second Harvest, brokering deals between national food industry and local food systems. Food banks are sort of the wholesale distributors where the grocery store equivalents, our food pantries, and the restaurant equivalents, our soup kitchens, go to get their food. The customers, our clients, who in good cases get to shop at those pantries and choose what they're going to eat at a soup kitchen, otherwise it's given to them. How far down this road do we really want to go? And are we going down this road because we're using a roadmap that we have intentionally created? that we as a society, a community, and government have come together to say this makes the most sense, this is the best way to make sure that people get their basic food needs met. I think we need to be aware of the danger of what such a two-tier system implies, that it is desirable and even acceptable and preferable to put our public and private resources into providing people in need with food that comes from a different system. You know, we've been here before, we've dealt with hunger in this country, we've tried different things. And it's time to remember that the way we think about and define the problem has everything to do with how we solve it. If we recognize that this country has an abundance of food, we are a great agricultural producing state, there's a logic that says let's just get that extra food and give it to people. But we know over time that doesn't work. We're seeing ourselves in that situation right now. We have the federal commodity food program in which farmers get paid for their surplus, and that surplus goes into emergency food systems, into the school systems. It's a good way of getting farmers money for what they're doing and helping get food to people. But that isn't enough. In fact, in the past few years, the amount of federal commodities going to the food banking system has been decreasing. So we know we can't rely on that. The issue of hunger came to prominence again in the 60s, and that was one of the first times we really started looking at it as an issue of food as a basic civil right. And that's when we implemented the food stamp system. It was a way for farmers and food, people in the food industry, the whole food sector, to participate in this economy of food. It wasn't just giving it away, it was giving people the opportunity to purchase foods of their choice. It paid the farmer, it paid the grocery store, it paid the people in between. We've seen that it actually helped. The reason it was implemented, if you remember in the 60s, was that we uncovered pockets of real malnutrition, the real kwashiorkor kind of malnutrition that we only thought existed overseas. We found that right in our own country, in Appalachia and other parts, and we said this isn't right. And the food stamp program really successfully did a lot to eradicate that problem. When we've had economic recessions and the government has cut back, we have had opportunities where the food stamp program decreases and we no longer have that as a safety net. I still think we have a lot to learn from the positive impacts of the food stamp system, where if it were properly funded could be a win-win situation for many sectors. I want to, there's many other things that I could talk about in terms of federal programs, but I want to spend the remainder of my time talking about local efforts that make a difference. What are the innovative ways that Portlanders are trying to help Portlanders improve their access to good food? I know Brian's going to cover what the Food Policy Council is doing. I just want to talk about some of the food aspects that are happening. Things like growing gardens that are trying to increase food access from the ground up. Portland Community Gardens, the Ecumenical Ministry of Oregon's Interfaith Network for Earth Concerns, their Patton Home Garden, St. John's Woods Garden Project, and there are many others that I'm not going to have the time to tell you about or acknowledge, but I want you to know that they are out there. At Growing Gardens, we're a small organization with the power of hundreds, and I really do mean the power of hundreds. Thanks to hundreds of volunteers, we go out in the spring and build raised bed gardens where people live, in their backyards, in their front yards, in their side yards, on their porches, wherever someone wants to garden, we help them do it. We also build gardens at schools, apartments, neighborhood lots, and we support our growing gardeners for 3 years with seeds, plant starts, workshops, work and learn parties in our backyard food garden, all to support people growing in health, nutrition, self-reliance, and community. Because there's something that happens when you grow a garden. Of necessity, you must have a certain amount of hope. How do you know for sure when you put all that effort in there, when you put those seeds in the ground, that they're really going to produce anything? But you also get other things. You get a belief that all this work really is going to mean something, that you are going to get exercise, that you're going to involve your family in something really special. You'll also learn where food comes from, where many of us, no matter what our income level, have become disconnected from where our food comes from. You learn what a real tomato or strawberry tastes like, and that makes you a more discriminating shopper. It also helps you learn how to prepare food. It also helps you appreciate what's at the farmer's market, at the local market that's selling local foods. It helps you really appreciate Oregon grown. You have ready opportunities to share with others. You may not have money, but if you have a zucchini plant, you know you've got lots to go around. It's a fact of life. Our youth grow programs are also helping to create future vegetable eaters. We do after-school garden programs, we do summer garden camp, and we do service learning around gardening, all really helping people understand what it's like in that living, learning laboratory. We know that the solution to hunger and food insecurity does not lie solely in making sure everyone grows their own food, but growing gardens and programs like ours are critical partners in this effort to solve the problem. We strongly believe and know that if you give a person a carrot, she has something to eat. We also know that if you teach her how to grow carrots, or if she already knows how to grow them, but she just needs the land, the seeds, the tools, we know that she will have the resources she needs to grow carrots for a lifetime. And who knows, maybe she will start juicing carrots, start bottling it, and start a new business. Anything is possible. It's all a question of investment. Where do we want to put our money? And it is our money, whether you are contributing to your favorite local charity or paying your taxes. Government is us, we are government, we make the choices. Lastly, I would be remiss as Director of Growing Gardens if I didn't remind you of a wonderful investment that you can make by joining us at the garden party on benefit reception and auction on May 23rd. Invitations are on the table over there. This is really a way of you getting involved and finding out about some of our programs and helping to support some of the work that we do. Thank you, and thank you for helping us grow.
Well, I get to talk about a community that we live in, a smaller community than our federal one, but one that perhaps has a little bit more of a progressive approach to our understanding about what's fair and what rights people have as individuals to food. Over the course of the last several years, there's been a growing movement in our community of concerned citizens about various food-related issues. And one of the things that we realized was that although our local governments have policies about land use or housing or transportation, that there's few, if any, direct policies that guide what we're going to do about food in our community going forward. And after a series of meetings and with leadership provided by the Interfaith Network for Earth Concerns and a truly grassroots organization that's well represented in this room today called Community Food Matters, we worked with Commissioner Dan Saltzman and Commissioner Maria Rojo de Steffi to sponsor resolutions to establish a City of Portland and Multnomah County Food Policy Council. And our goals as a council are to provide advice to the city and the county staff on food-related issues as needed. We also developed a set of governing principles to guide future government and community decision-making related to food. And we identified and reported back to the City Council and the County Board on options for improving our local land use policies and rules related to food production and distribution. We're looking at, do our land use policies help or hinder our agricultural community? Do they help or hinder efforts to bring food access into communities that need it the most? We looked at methods for building demand for locally and regionally raised foods. We investigated our city and county food purchasing policies and practices. We looked at the availability of healthy and affordable food for all of our residents, and we took a look at the capacity of our local communities to promote and engage in healthy food practices. Our council consists of a diverse group of community leaders. Many of them are here today also. Farmers, restaurant owner, grocer, land use consultant, representatives from food manufacturing company, Oregon Farmers Market, Portland Public Schools, Oregon State University Extension Service, African American Health Coalition, the Portland Sustainable Development Commission, the Oregon Food Bank, and others. And we used a variety of outreach and research activities to perform our work. They included taking a food policy inventory, which involved interviewing city and county staff to understand how local government policies affect the production and distribution of food. We met with various members of our community at large to gather ideas about how to improve food access in our region's neighborhoods. We heard from growers their ideas on strategies to support regional agriculture. We worked with Community Food Matters to survey some of our large institutional purchasers of food, like our schools, our corporate campuses, correctional facilities, to understand what obstacles existed that were preventing these organizations from purchasing more of their food locally. We worked with Metro to create a GIS map of grocery stores, farmers markets, emergency food locations, and community gardens in Multnomah County. And we've used this great tool to identify areas with inadequate food access, and that information is guiding our current work. And after we gathered this information, we drafted a set of principles that I'm proud to say were unanimously adopted by our city council and our county board. And they included such novel concepts as, 1, every city and county resident has the right to an adequate supply of nutritious, affordable, and culturally appropriate food. Right? So Multnomah County and Portland's got it figured out, even if our federal government doesn't. This concept we call food security. We said that food security contributes to the health and the well-being of our residents, and it reduces the need for medical care and social services and the costs associated with providing those services. We said as part of these principles that food and agriculture are central to the economy of our city and our county, and that we should make a strong commitment to the protection and the growth and the development of these industrial sectors. And we said that a robust regional food system that protects our natural resources contributes significantly to the environmental and economic well-being of our community. So we're talking about the health of our citizens, we're talking about the health of our environment, and we're talking about the health of our business community. 3 critical things to having a sustainable regional food system. Once we established these principles, we set about on the work of creating and implementing the policies to make that happen. And for this group of people, it was a little bit of a transition because you have a lot of people who are very active and want to do stuff right away, and we had to kind of put our brakes on and step away from doing projects that addressed short-term results and work towards policy, which for some of us was a little bit of a slower process than we're used to. We did make a series of recommendations to the city and county, and again, all of them were unanimously endorsed. And we're making some exciting progress. One particular thing that's just happened in the last few days that we're particularly excited about is a project that we're working on with Multnomah County Corrections and Aramark Corporation, which is the food purveyor for the corrections facility. Captain Linda Yankee, who is the person in charge of food procurement for the corrections facility, has been very supportive from the beginning of our efforts to increase the amount of food that the corrections facility purchases from our local farmers. And Multnomah County Corrections is the largest purchaser in our county government of food. So we're in the process of putting together a program for this growing season, and originally we were talking about trying to get 3 crops purchased locally. And I got an email the last couple of days that said that it now looks like this growing season the jail will be buying tomatoes, beans, broccoli, cabbage, carrots, cauliflower, celery, green leaf, red leaf, and romaine lettuce, onions, spinach, squash, zucchini, and eggs from our local and regional growers. And this might not sound like a big deal, but it actually is, because up until now, when we had our meeting with the county recently and we were talking about where does the food come from, and no one really knows. Aramark doesn't know, and the county doesn't know because it hasn't been one of the considerations that they've taken. And so now we're not only going to be buying these products locally, but we're going to be establishing benchmarks of what we're buying so that as we go forward, we can see if we're making progress. And I wanted to commend Ranella Produce, who is the largest wholesaler that's contributing to this process, for the extra work that they're going to do to make it happen. And we're hoping that the county will be successful in this experiment and that other large institutional purchases will follow this model in the future. For instance, wouldn't it be great if our kids in schools could have more fresh, locally grown vegetables and fruit on their menus also? And all across the country, there's programs called Farm to Cafeteria that are doing just this. And we think that we live in a community, Multnomah County, that should continue to play a leadership role in this area, just like we have done on other sustainability issues. The project that's most relevant to the food access issue that we're discussing here today is occurring in Lentz. And the object of the program there is to accomplish two goals that were endorsed by the city and the county. The first is to plan for food access by developing community-based solutions for areas with inadequate food access. And that GIS mapping work that we did with Metro identified Lentz, which is in outer southeast, as a part of our county that needs attention. Our research has indicated that Lentz is one of the most food insecure neighborhoods in our area. And we're going to be partnering with various neighborhood groups, including a community development corporation, Multnomah County Health, the Parks Department, the schools, and others, and we're going to conduct a pilot planning effort there. And our objectives are going to be to conduct outreach to residents to identify food needs and barriers to those food needs, to work with community partners on food access strategies, including recruiting stores, improving transportation, expanding community gardens, or increasing farm direct opportunities. And we're going to establish neighborhood standards for food access and incorporate them into the ongoing planning efforts. For instance, when the town center is being planned, let's think ahead about whether or not the zoning will allow for grocery stores there, or where the farmer's market will be. And let's plan ahead to make sure that there's public transportation that will allow people to get to grocery stores, to get to the farmers markets, to get to the community gardens. And our second goal there is to increase the visibility of regional food by promoting regional food products and regional producers through a combination of farm direct sales, farmers markets, the proposed Portland Public Market, and grocery stores. The Food Policy Council's Public Market Committee is now preparing a how-to manual for getting electronic benefit transfer. It's called EBT, which is the current version of food stamps. They're in a little card, like a debit card. And you can't use those cards at the farmers markets because there's no phone lines or data ports there. And so it effectively eliminates the opportunity for some of our low-income members of our community to be able to go to the farmers market and buy food. So we're trying to get them into the markets to buy the food. They can get fresh, nutritious food as opposed to buying the highly processed, relatively expensive and packaged foods that are the only food available to many of them. And the Lentz market holds the best potential for utilizing this technology in an effective way because such a large percentage of its residents are food stamp users. Ron asked me to speak just for a second about my perspective from my role as president of New Seasons Market. And the one thing that I want to tell you is that our company has been successful in opening stores in areas that have been abandoned by the larger chains. And we are right now in the process of opening 2 more. And we think that we found a strategy that allows us to site our markets in this sweet spot right where a lower income community and a middle or upper income community meet, and that we've designed the stores to meet the needs of both those communities. And we're working with a national nonprofit called the Community Food Security Coalition, and our own Sharon Thornberry is the chair of the board of that coalition. And we're working with people in other cities to put together a manual on how they can open grocery stores similar to what we're doing here to serve the communities there. And we're working with people from Philadelphia and Detroit, Chicago, Syracuse, and all over the country where communities have the potential to be food insecure because they lack access to full-service grocery stores. And I actually read in today's Philadelphia Inquirer that some of that work's actually coming to fruition, and that $100 million just was made available yesterday to open grocery stores, $10 million in grants, $90 million in low-interest loans to open grocery stores in Philadelphia in low-income neighborhoods. So we're seeing positive things happening elsewhere. Finally, I wanted to say that we're pleased that the city and county board have the wisdom to recognize that they have a key role in planning for adequate food access in our neighborhoods. And in the time that I've had, I've only been able to touch on the scope of the work that we're doing. We have a lot left to do. Some of this work is urgent. There's hungry people around us. And I want to emphasize that almost all of this work is being done by citizen volunteers. Both the city of Portland and the county have supplied us with some staff help. We have some great AmeriCorps interns. But because of the budget constraints that we're facing as a community, the amount of help that we have is very limited. And so my pitch here is to the City Club. We'd love to see you take some of your resources in terms of the research that you can perform or the advocacy that you can create, and to partner with us to help advocate for members of our community, many of whom are children and are food insecure. And Rosemarie Cordello, who's our co-chair and really the individual that drives much of the work of our council, she and I would, either of us or both of us would be glad to meet with any of you and to share some more details about the work that we're doing, what our objectives are, and how you might be able to help us achieve our goals. Thank you very much.
Katy?
I'd like to take a few moments and share with you a picture of what agriculture in Oregon looks like today. If we want agriculture in Oregon to be a positive force in addressing the food security concerns of Oregonians, Oregon agriculture must not only survive, but thrive. That's the message I hope you take home with you today. The best way for Oregon agriculture to play a role in providing safe, nutritious, and abundant food to Oregonians is to secure the economic and ecological viability of the agricultural industry. Let me tell you about the unique nature of the industry in Oregon that sets it apart from agriculture in other areas of the country. Oregon agriculture is made up of some 40,000 farms scattered all across the state. However, the industry is a vital part of the urban community as well. 4 of the top 5 agriculture-producing counties are located within 1 hour's drive of Portland. And unlike many other parts of the United States, Oregon has actually seen an increase in the number of farms in the last 20 years, thanks in good measure to the forward-thinking system of farmland protection put in place by Oregon's legislature nearly 30 years ago. Agriculture's very existence provides a foundational economic and social infrastructure that defines the landscape of most of rural Oregon. What comes to mind when thinking of Fossil, Burns, Scioto, Condon, or Klamath Falls? Farms and ranches. In a word, agriculture. In most of these parts of the state, it is the production and sale of agricultural products that returns dollars from urban customers, whether in Portland or Tokyo, reversing the tide of outmigration of cash that would otherwise occur. For all of Oregon, agriculture is an industry that equates to more than $8 billion in economic activity when you consider all the directly related goods and activities. Agriculture is Oregon's second largest traded industry sector. 1 in 12 jobs in Oregon is connected to this industry. Over 97% of Oregon's farms are family-owned and operated, some by a husband and wife, some by a single operator, and some through multiple family arrangements with children or siblings. The myth that Oregon agriculture is populated by large corporations making big profits just isn't true. On the farm, these family operations employ some 100,000 people during peak summer months and about 40,000 during other times of the year. Farmers in Oregon pay the highest wages for farm work anywhere in the U.S. Much of this work is highly skilled, reflecting the specialized nature of Oregon's mix of crops. Another 22,000 people are employed by Oregon's food processing sector. All of you can fully appreciate the fact that another large economic engine here in Portland owes much of its existence to agriculture. The majority of the Port of Portland's total tonnage of exports, over 60%, is agriculture sourced from Oregon and many other western states as well as Canada. By volume, agriculture and food products are Oregon's largest export. By value, they rank second only to electronics. Every $1 billion in agricultural exports supports 15,000 Oregon jobs. 80% of what we produce in Oregon crosses our state's borders, and 40% of that moves internationally. So the question is, why are export markets so important for Oregon agriculture? First of all, Oregon simply doesn't have the population to consume all that we produce. Many of these items are highly perishable and need to be marketed during a short period. Let's use cherries as an example. About 60 million pounds of cherries are produced in Oregon each year, primarily harvested in the month of late June and into July. If every Oregonian ate the U.S. average of cherry consumption, that would still only be less than 9% of Oregon's total cherry production. Growers would love to have Oregonians eat 10 times more cherries. But until they do, consumers in Japan, China, and Europe are willing to pay premium prices for fresh Oregon cherries. Oregon grows nearly all the hazelnuts produced in the United States. Would hazelnuts continue to be grown in Oregon if most or all had to be consumed locally? If our goal is to sustain Oregon agriculture, then we can't do it by limiting marketing opportunities. Profit margins in agriculture are very slim, and production costs here are higher than those in Mexico, China, or Chile. To be profitable, Oregon growers and processors must differentiate and add value to their products and find niche markets willing to pay higher prices. While exports are critical to Oregon agriculture, I certainly support more local purchases of Oregon-grown products because of a desire to know where their food comes from and that it is safe and fresh. There is an increased interest in locally grown food products by Oregonians. Consider these statistics. The number of farmers markets in Oregon has grown from just 10 in 1990 to more than 60 statewide now. Many are concentrated in the Portland metro area. The number of roadside stands offering fresh produce is now more than 100. Again, many of those are located near our urban centers. A growing number of retailers are identifying and marketing locally grown products, even identifying the local farmer who produced the food. And we have just initiated the Brand Oregon program to identify locally harvested seafood to buyers in the Portland and Salem area. Some consumers are even seeking some sort of certification or label that shows where and how the food was produced. This is a growing niche market for which these consumers pay a premium. Some of these certification programs are offered by the Oregon Department of Agriculture, others by private groups. It's important to note these programs are voluntary. However, many producers and processors are choosing to pursue certification in order to differentiate their products. To specifically address the issue of making food accessible, both for short-term emergency needs and through affordable and local supplies, let me make the following points. Oregon's food industry, growers and processors, is the largest provider of donations to the Oregon Food Bank Network and provides 60% of all direct donations. Another 18% of what is received by the food bank comes from USDA assistance programs. Think about it. Nearly 80% of the volume of foods distributed by the food bank comes directly from Oregon growers and processors or the USDA surplus food products. The Women, Infant, and Children program provides federal dollars to nutritionally needy families in Oregon, whereby they receive redeemable coupons for fresh fruits and vegetables available at farmers markets. More than 6,000 families have participated annually in the program, jointly administered by the Oregon Department of Agriculture and the Oregon Department of Human Services. A similar program, the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program, provides coupons for low-income senior citizens to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables at participating Oregon farmers markets and roadside stands. Each year, nearly $1 million in senior coupons are redeemed at Oregon's farmers markets. One interesting plan is just now being developed by the visionary Hermiston engineer, Fred Ziari. He has developed a new program called Farmers Ending Hunger. Fred's concept is very simple. It brings farmers together with urban non-farmers to specifically produce food for the Oregon Food Bank. Farmers will contribute up to 1% of their land to grow high-protein crops like beans and peas. Cost of production will be partnered through donations from the urban non-farmer donors. The simplicity of this program is astounding, as it makes it easy for farmers to plant a few extra rows of peas or beans and have the cost of production paid by their urban non-farm counterparts. The food bank gains as products chronically in short supply can find their way into food assistance programs around the state. Programs like this are a superb way for us to continue to bridge the urban-rural gap in Oregon and do so through high-quality foods for local consumption. Everyone has to eat. By offering a quality, fresh, locally grown food product either at the grocery store, the restaurant, or the farmer's market, consumers can begin to appreciate the value of sustaining Oregon's agriculture industry. Let me again emphasize the importance of a diversified market for Oregon agricultural products. For the most part, we do not overwhelm the marketplace with large volumes of product. Oregon agriculture must continue to look for opportunities to add value by processing what it produces. That's how Oregon agriculture competes in a local, national, and global marketplace. That strategy is not confined to exports. Some of the commodities we produce need to be transformed through value-added processing before Oregonians themselves can enjoy these products. We don't eat bulk wheat. We turn it into flour, which is then turned into bread or noodles. None of us probably eats a handful of cranberries right out of the bog. It is turned into juice or dried before consumption. Value can also be added through the way the commodity is produced. Specific management practices and certification programs often give products more clout in the marketplace. Marketing options must exist for our agriculture. Many Oregon consumers choose to buy lower-cost food items at large national discount retailers. In general, Oregon agriculture cannot be the low-cost, high-volume food producer. Thank goodness there are local retailers who offer consumers an Oregon choice. New Seasons, thank you, Brian, is a good example. But at this time, the percentage of the population that will access these local retailers is relatively small and selectively targeted. Still, there is certainly something all of us can do to strengthen the connection between Oregon agriculture and Oregonians, thereby strengthening the industry itself. I challenge all of you to ask for Oregon products wherever you shop and wherever you eat. A sustainable agriculture in Oregon means one that is economically viable, ecologically sound, and meets the needs of our citizens. But remember that economics are part of that sustainable equation. Agriculture must stay alive. The game is over if Oregon agriculture goes out of business. Then Oregonians will not be given the choice of selecting locally grown food and will be dependent on somewhere else to provide a stable and secure food supply. We all have a role to play in making agriculture viable, which helps set the table for meeting Oregon's food needs. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, we often have stimulating speakers at City Club, but I wanted to say a special thank you to New Seasons because I don't think we've ever had a lunch which has been so fresh, nutritious, and tasty. So it's a special thanks. One benefit of being a member of City Club is that City Club members have a chance to ask questions of our panel. I'll extend that to Slow Food Movement members today as our partners in this event. Our first question, though, will come from Chris Smith, who's a member of the Board of Governors of the City Club, and he chairs the club's advocacy committee. He's also a senior internet technologist for the Xerox Office Group. And in addition to asking the first question, Chris is going to tell us about some related activities that are going on in the club. Following Chris's question, again, we'll open the microphone up to City Club members and Slow Food Movement members. Please identify yourself, ask a question in 30 seconds or less, and we hope for questions, not statements. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Well, I enjoy the best of both worlds. I'm a City Club member, and I'm a Slow Food member. And for those of you who can only claim one of those privileges, we have membership materials on the tables for both organizations. And if by any chance you're a member of neither, think how incomparably you can improve the quality of your life today by joining both. As Andy mentioned, this is not the end of the collaboration between City Club and Slow Food, but just the beginning. If today is a taste of food policy, we have a 3-course dinner laid out for you over the summer. We're going to have a 3-event evening series, which we'd like to invite all of you to, although there are only 75 spaces, so you're not all going to fit, so sign up soon. The first event will be on June 3rd, and it'll be held at the EcoTrust building in conjunction with the opening of the Pearl District Farmers Market. And at that event, we will talk about the farm direct connection, the processes by which we can get foods directly from the producers to our tables with the fewest intervening steps as possible. On July 15th, we'll meet at Urban Wineworks, where we'll actually focus on the implications of Oregon's land use system on agriculture in Oregon and use the wine industry as a case study. And Carrie McLaren from Thousand Friends of Oregon will join us as will Jason Lett from Bishop Vineyards. And then we'll conclude the series in September at Nikki USA, where we'll actually be on the meatpacking floor of a packer of game, birds, and meats. And I'm told that we'll get to sample both rabbit and venison as part of the tasting for that. So each of these policy events will have a food tasting component where we'll have the opportunity to sample Oregon's bounty in very well prepared form. So I hope you will all take us up on that and join us for that event. It is $60 for City Club or Slow Food members and $80 for guested members, and you can call the City Club office and register. On to my question. I'm going to draw my question from today's Oregonian by a little bit roundabout fashion. Of course, the name slow food comes from the opposite of fast food. And some of you may have read the book Fast Food Nation, which is about the commoditization of food and the impacts that has. I work in high technology marketing, and for us, commoditization is a word to be feared. It means that your product no longer competes on any differentiated features, but instead competes solely on price, and quality is simply defined as the minimum acceptable that you can still sell your product with. When that happens to food, we see some very bad things. Slow food, of course, is promoting the production of artisanal food and the exact opposite of all those values. I want to go back to the concept of decommodification and talk about an example that was in the Oregonian today, where they talked about Oregon Country Beef. And we were privileged here at City Club to have Jack Southworth from Oregon Country Beef here on the podium on a program we did a couple months ago on food safety, talking about their products in light of the mad cow scare. Well, what Oregon Country Beef has done is define their product not solely on price, but on the fact that they don't use hormones or genetically modified feed in feeding their cattle. And the news in today's Oregonian is that they have struck an agreement by which Burgerville will use exclusively Oregon Country Beef. So we have an example now of fast food that's not so fast anymore. It's looking at a different set of values. And the question I want to ask, and I'll pose this mainly to Katy, but I'm sure the rest of the panel is going to want to join in. Katy, you talked about certified and other kinds of agriculture being niche markets. My question is, can we make the decommodification of agriculture the dominant paradigm of Oregon agriculture and start leading ourselves away from the fast food nation mentality?
What I was trying to say in my remarks is I think that may be the only way that agriculture can survive in Oregon. When you look at the fact that you've got China growing food products that we consume, and then they can grow those products at a cost much lesser than our producers can grow, we have got to figure out a way to produce a product that people are going to buy at a higher price. And by doing that, it's adding value, it's decommodifying, it's looking for ways to differentiate our product in the marketplace compared to a product from China. So I would say a very short answer to your question is, yes, I think we need to, and part of all of our job is to help agriculture to do that. And by asking for Oregon products in your restaurants and stores, you're helping to do that as opposed to just going and buying based on the lowest price product that's in the store.
I'd add to that for a second. Katy and I had the privilege yesterday to be present at the Oregon Country Beef growers meeting that got held out at Edgefield, and Governor Kulingowski came out there and spent a little bit of time talking to the group of ranchers. And it was an interesting meeting to sit in this group of Eastern Oregon families and all these guys with cowboy hats and big belt buckles, and it was quite an impressive group of people. And we had a chance to talk about this very issue. And one of the things that I thought was interesting about it and that I had a chance to comment on was the missing piece of the puzzle. New Seasons Market buys all of our beef from Oregon Country Beef, and we're glad to do so. And I've been doing business with the co-op for about 13 years. And we were talking about how can we find the balance where Oregon Country Beef farmers, ranchers, get paid a fair price for the work that they're doing, and they can have a economic sustainably operation, and the grocery store can sell that product at a price that customers can afford, and this grocery store can make the profit it needs to make, but we're leaving out a whole chunk of people, the people who can't afford to shop at the grocery store to buy Oregon Country Beef products. And so we saw it as a very positive thing that a so-called fast food restaurant like Burgerville was bringing in this high-quality product for a couple of reasons. Our friend Greg Higgins, who was on the Food Policy Council for our first year and helped us form many of the recommendations that we made, serves these products at his White Table restaurant, and I've had the pleasure of enjoying them many times there. But to have a fast food restaurant where many of our citizens of various economic backgrounds can enjoy those same foods while supporting Oregon agriculture, we think is a huge step towards making these products available to more people. So we think that moving from this tiny niche that they've been in to more of a mainstream product and being in Burgerville is a fantastic step.
And I might add, not only do they use Oregon country beef as their source of beef, they also use Tillamook cheese, Oregon hazelnuts, Oregon fresh berries. They're just a great supporter for Oregon agriculture.
I wanted to just... I think it's a really important point that you're making, particularly, Brian, about spreading the wealth of Oregon's bounty to places where folks who aren't buying the top dollar meals have a chance to consume, because that is a source of food for many people who have lower incomes. And one of the things I think it raises is our goal really to decrease the cost of food? Is that really going to solve the problem? Is it the cost of food that's making it impossible for low-income people to get the food they need? That's really not the issue. We pay probably the lowest percentage of our total incomes on food in this country relative to almost any country. It's all these other things that cost so much that we may have an impact over housing and things like that. And the other side of that is that already many of our farmers are struggling, not making a living off of what they're getting for the products that they're producing. And so I think it's one of the biggest impacts we can have, those of us who have the dollars, is to vote with those food dollars by purchasing the things that may cost a little bit more. What are you really saving by going somewhere and buying something in bulk that you don't know where it came from? Does that really give you that much more discretionary income to do something else with? Those of us that have the money, we can really create the market that can then make it more possible for more people to appreciate it.
Deb, that was a great introduction for our next question from Ray Polani, who I'm sure will tie together the fact that transportation and food policy are inextricably related. And one of the mandates of the Food Policy Council discussion really revolved around understanding the average dinner item on an American table travels approximately 1,500 miles from its source to the end of your fork. And if that's the average, we can begin to understand what the extremes are. So with that in mind, Ray, your 30-second question.
Thank you, Ron. I'm Ray Polani, a City Club member. I hope that you realize the blessing you had. For 4 weeks during the month of April, my wife and I were in Europe. So that accounts for my not being here and badgering. Anyhow, I think what I want to say is that nationally and locally, we need to pay much more attention to transportation costs. Coming from Europe, you realize how seriously we have neglected our rail component of transportation. In Europe, both goods and people are moved by rail extensively.
Ray, I am going to encourage the question.
Okay. The question is, what is specifically the Department of Agriculture of the state of Oregon doing to support private railroads in the movement of goods and Amtrak Express of perishable in this context?
Thank you.
Very good question. I think you asked a similar transportation-related question at another City Club event I was at many years ago. The Department of Agriculture is actually very involved in the transportation issue, and from a number of fronts. Transportation is critical for Oregon farmers and ranchers to get their product to market, and whether that's a local market, a domestic market somewhere in the U.S., or the international market. We work very closely with the Port of Portland on a number of transportation infrastructure issues. Particularly this year, we worked with the port and the nursery industry to figure out ways to move nursery product by rail instead of truck. And there's a lot of logistics that need to go into that needed to be worked out. The key for us is getting product to market, particularly those perishable products, and that's been the challenge with rail. But if we can get a system in place that deals with those logistics, and also working very closely with the port on their intermodal effort in the Troutdale area, those are the kinds of things that will help Oregon agriculture and help us move product at a less cost. And we need to be able to do that.
We need to invest in rail.
We have time for one quick question, and then unfortunately our time will expire.
Ryan Lyle, City Club member. When you say local agriculture, it means like an hour away, like you were saying. Is there any way to increase, like with the gardens and stuff within Portland? Like I've heard of permaculture and like other ways to compact like a lot of food into small areas in the city.
What he's referring to is a method of growing that really combines a lot of different philosophies, but one of the results is that you can grow a lot of things in a very small space. And I think one of the challenges for us looking at urban agriculture in particular, I think you'll find if you ever have a chance to visit any of our home gardeners or some of the community gardens in town and other places, you'll see that people do make very good use of very small spaces. I think the other part of what we have to look at is that, as Katy was mentioning, there's a really important relationship between the urban and rural areas of our states, and the more we can keep an agricultural presence in the urban environment as well, the better it keeps our urban residents informed about the importance of saving that farmland in other places where we need it. And there are very many ways you can do small-scale entrepreneurial food production in an urban setting that can be very productive, both in terms of contributing to the local food economy and individual economies. So it's kind of a little tangent on your question, but hopefully that gets at it.
I want to thank all of our guests. As a moderator, you proved me absolutely correct. You are a stellar panel. Debra Lippoldt, Brian Rohter, Katy Coba, thank you for joining us.